Welcome into the Skinny Podcast, the weekly potpourri edition. I'm Richard Skinner, Local12.com digital sports columnist and editor. With Rick Boring, as always, it's presented by Blake, the attorney Maislin. We're one day away from the start of the NFL draft. The Reds score 24 runs one night, can't score the next couple of nights, get bad relief pitching. So what looked like a team on the rise is now the team I think we all think they are, which is a mediocre team at best. We will discuss those things and some more college basketball transfer portal as it continues to heat up. UC and Xavier have had a little good run here of getting players. So a lot to discuss. We may even get in the NBA playoffs a little bit, even though I will tell you this, Rick, I do find myself, I don't know why, I can't watch regular season NBA. I can watch the playoffs, and I love playoff hockey. I love them both.
Yeah, I don't get into the hockey thing the way a lot of casual sports fans do, but the NBA playoffs, I like NBA during the regular season. I don't have enough time to watch it the way I would like to, aside from but keeping track of my Spurs. But yeah, I mean,
the choice between college basketball and the NBA, I'm taking college basketball every time.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't even really have a choice in that matter. Right. But when you get to this time of year and the sports schedule has slowed down and you get these NBA playoff games, which are really fun to watch. I mean, it's just great theater, great entertainment if you're a basketball fan. I have not been as locked in this year so far as I typically am to the NBA playoffs, but I have enjoyed what I've seen so far.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, the Knicks aren't obviously one of the best teams in the East, and they're not going to win the East. But, man, when there's playoff basketball in the Garden, it is different. There's something about it.
And the Lakers too. I like the Lakers being relevant as well.
Yeah.
I mean, and I always hated the Lakers growing up. Like I was a big hater of Kobe and Shaq and all of that. So not a Lakers guy, but I do find it more fun when they're involved and they're in the mix and we're talking about them. So that's probably enough NBA talk for the group of Cincinnati sports fans that we're talking to. Let's get to the Bengals in the NFL draft. We talked a lot about it last week, kind of did our preview to give it a little more shelf life. But you guys got to talk to Duke Tobin, the Bengals director of player personnel, on Monday of this week. Let's start there. I have a few questions that I have from what he said, but I want to ask you, give me just one thing, takeaway. What did you leave that press conference thinking after you heard from Duke Tobin?
The kind of what I thought going in, that they really feel like the board will talk to them in that first round especially, and I think that the draft then will go whatever shape it goes, that, they need an edge, and there's plenty of edges that could be on the board. They need a safety, and I think they like one over the other, and I'll tell you why here in a second. If he's on the board, he's intriguing. I don't think they go guard, but there's a couple of possible guards. I'm one that wouldn't go tackle, and I mentioned last week, I mean, you re-signed B.J. Hill, you signed T.J. Slaton, you spent a second-round pick and a third-round pick last year. Excuse me, and you're going to dive back in with a first-round pick this year? I don't see the value in that, but I know they're high on Walter Nolan. So I think it's a lot of ways they can go. And I don't think any of them will be wrong. I think they'll have a player on the board. They go, yep, we like that guy. Let's go with that. And then from there, depending on what that position is, I think you'll see the draft kind of unwind. It could unwind. When I've done mocks, it unwinds for me every time different ways where I'm trying to plug different holes at different rounds. I don't think I've reached so much, and I don't think they'll reach so much. So that's the thing for me is he kind of confirmed that I think they're just kind of like and it sounds like a logical thing to do every year, but they don't do that every year. And sometimes that's not the way the board works. I think the board works in their favor this year.
You mentioned potential difference between safeties that they might be looking at. That was one thing I wanted to ask you about in terms of Al Golden. Are there any hints yet at what type of players Al Golden is looking for when they draft defense this year?
Big, fast, athletic, smart. who's
the same as everyone else?
Correct. Yes, correct. Because I don't know what the schematics are going to look like. It's pretty be standard 4-2-5 defense like everybody else does. I mean, will it be blitz heavy? I guess that'll depend on what they get pass rush wise in this draft. And so, yeah, I don't think we do. I'm looking forward to finally getting to see them on the field here in a couple of weeks when they get the OTAs, just to kind of see what he's trying to concoct a little bit.
Duke Tobin talked about not drafting players who are long-term projects, guys that you're waiting 2 or 3 years to see them develop and potentially make an impact. And he also talked about drafting for fit, for roles, rather than drafting starters necessarily. It felt a little bit like he might have been contradicting himself during that portion somewhat.
Yes.
I also think he probably didn't mean it to be taken as something he didn't mean it to make a big point out of starters or talking about the starters when he made that comment, but it kind of stood out to me a little bit just from the standpoint of, I'm curious from your perspective, how likely is it that the Bengals take a player who's going to start right away with their first round pick?
I think if it's Nick Emenwari, I think he battles with Geno Stone for a starting spot.
Yeah, I guess that's the real question, right? Is what positions would have the potential to start that they might draft?
Zach Taylor brought this up. Duke brought it up as well. I know people don't want to hear this, and could it be a smokescreen? Could they take this position eventually? They like the guards on the roster. You don't have to. I'm not sure I do, but I think they feel like they've got starting caliber guards that plug Cody Ford in and let him play guard all year as opposed to bouncing around. Let Lucas Patrick battle a Cordell Volson for the other guard. They think they're going to be just okay, and maybe they are. Maybe they have belief in the new offensive line coach, and they have more belief in some of these players than we do. That's the one for me that because going in it felt like I'd edge rusher, guard, safety, linebacker, and at some point probably a defensive tackle and probably some point a swing tackle. I thought at some point maybe a running back to give you a Chase Brown type player, but after they rework Zach Moss's contract, you literally have your 3 running backs on your roster at the moment that would be active on game day. So I don't know if you're going to waste one of your 6 picks on that position group. Maybe bring in somebody as an undrafted free agent. So I think safety. You would say maybe edge too. That hey, if they got the right edge, could that guy beat out Joseph Osai and Miles Murphy? Sure. But I would think going into the year, they want Miles Murphy to play. Maybe he shows him in camp that he just can't do it, but they want him to play. They re-signed Joseph Osai because they believe that he was an ascending player at the end of last year. And to be honest with you, Rick, you go back and look, the last 7 games, in 6 of the last 7 games, he recorded at least a half a sack. He had 5 sacks over the last 7 games. He had 4 sacks in his previous 40 career games. So it tells me a guy was starting to maybe get it. And they believe in the young tackles that they think in year 2, McKinley Jackson and Chris Jenkins are going to ascend. So safety's the one for me that I still don't know how – they're not very deep at that position either. So even if this guy comes in and Geno Stone beats him out and he plays well, okay, you're going to probably need that guy at some point anyway.
The offensive line thing, you mentioned them maybe not needing to take a guard. That could be a bit of a smokescreen based on what they're saying. Is there any possibility that the smokescreen there is, hey, we're actually going to draft an offensive lineman, but we're probably just going to draft a tackle that we might slot between guard and tackle initially and sort of feel him out when he gets here?
Yeah, I think they have a more desperate need for the swing tackle guy that could maybe fit into that guard spot. In my mind, Cody Ford plays that role pretty well. But if they're projecting to move Cody into the lineup as a guard, then you're going to need a swing tackle. I know Devin Cochran started a game at Tennessee last year. They won that game that he started, and he performed okay. But I don't think your plan would be to go into the season with him. And no knock on Amarius Mims and Orlando Brown Jr. But Mims, has a little history of injuries, missed a couple games last year. Orlando had been durable up until last year, but missed a string of games with an injury. And, he's not getting any younger. So I mean, Rick, even in a perfect way, I don't see those 2 guys making 17 starts each. It's just not the nature of the beast. It doesn't feel like. So you better have somebody capable of stepping in and playing.
There was a point during the press conference where Duke Tobin was talking about the offense. He sort of said something along the lines like, our offense is really good. And then was mentioning, we got to shore up our defense and play complementary football and all of that. It got me thinking about the idea of, do you think teams, personnel people view the sport similar to the way fans do? And like we think of the Bengals as an offensive team probably, right? As fans, we do. Do you think the organization ever looks at it that way? And I mean, I know ideally they all want to be even and balanced and be great on offense and defense and special teams and play complementary football. But is there any value maybe into deciding, hey, we are an offensive team, that is our strength, and we're just going to continue to lean into that and try to have a great offense or something? I mean, I'm just curious how they view that potentially.
Well, I mean, I think they view it that way because of the resources they've allocated. They paid for the quarterback. They paid for the highest paid non-quarterback in the league as one wide receiver. They signed the other wide receiver to a pretty lucrative extension. They signed their tight end to a three-year deal. It was on a 1-year deal last year. They're paying Orlando Brown a pretty penny. So, I mean, just financially alone, they've invested heavily on that side of the football. And yeah, I think you do think of them as an offensive team, but now you are at the point where you got to fix the defense enough to where you feel good on offense. That's where, again, guard, swing tackle. Okay. Yeah. You got to get one of those guys, but I think they feel really good on paper. If you had to start the season today, they feel like they've probably got one of the elite offenses in the NFL. And I don't think they're wrong. We've seen them mask offensive line issues before, right? I mean, they went to a Super Bowl behind the worst offensive line Joe Burrow's played behind. So they've done it before. Now I know you're rolling the dice every time with that of Joe taking a hit that is catastrophic. It ends the season. But they've done that before. So they need help on defense. And, could you go guard second roundish just to get it out of the way? Okay, that's fine. But most everything else in this draft better be on the defensive side.
Yeah, and that's totally been the way that I've been thinking. It's got to be a defensive overhaul, and we even talked last week about how, look, if you look at the team that went to the Super Bowl, that was probably the worst offensive line that they've had over the last few years, and that team had the most success. I was on
because it was capable on defense. I mean, really, honestly, if you want to look at the playoff run was defensive oriented.
Especially once you got into the postseason,
right?
Because late in the year, we were talking about Joe Burrow, and that kind of continued to, like, Joe Burrow led this team to the Super Bowl. But in reality, you're right. It was Evan McPherson and the defense that did a lot of the heavy lifting in the playoff wins. So I agree that I am very much of the opinion, or I have been at least, that this is a defensive overhaul year. They've got to improve the defense to get it back to respectability at least. But I don't know. I heard those comments by him about we're a really strong offense. And I started doing it in my head of like, man, maybe you just decide we're an offensive team. Like, I mean, as you mentioned, they already have to some extent, and you just lean into this with the draft and say, first round, we're getting an offensive lineman. We're just going to make this offense as airtight as possible. Make sure everything is covered there.
And you could argue that the money that went to T, and again, I could also make the argument you have enough money to still do this to some degree, that the money that went to T could have gone to Trey Hendrickson. They chose to allocate it to T, right?
Yeah. Was there, again, the Trey Hendricks thing just bores me at this point. I'm getting annoyed with it. But is there any update there? Was there any movement or chatter behind the scenes this week?
No, and I knew it. I asked Zach, do you expect him to be here for any of the voluntary stuff? And he gave me the stock answer I thought was coming, which is, hey, it's only day one. Okay, that's fine. You're right. It is only day one. And I'm not going to lose sleep over that. But no, in fact, I don't know how I got 800 words out of it. I think I used a couple old Trey quotes of basically there's no update on the Trey Hendrickson situation. And I don't think there is. I said this on a podcast I did with Mike Petraglia on Monday. Could a team wow them in this draft with an offer? And if you got your edge out of the way, would you feel like, okay, new edge, and we got Miles and Joseph Osai, and we're getting a bunch of picks for Trey? Could you? Maybe. I'm just to the yoke that they either extend him or he plays on this 1-year deal, the rest of this contract. Maybe
the most surprising mock draft commentary that I heard came from your guy and his cast of cronies, James Rapine. There was a last mock draft they did talking about taking 2 offensive linemen with the first 2 picks. I know some fans were worked up about that possibility. Do you see any possible way the Bengals might decide to do something like that? No, not with the first 2. Like I said, I could see it coming in either the first or the second round. And again, I don't want to discount the swing tackle spot. I think I did a mock earlier this morning that I haven't written, and I think I'm going to redo it again. But I took a second round guard and a 4th round tackle. So I took 2. I just didn't take him in the first 2 picks. All right. Anything else draft-wise? I mean, again, we kind of did our full preview. So if you want full predictions of what they're going to do and everything, that's all in last week's show. You can go back and listen to that. We started off the show with that. I don't know if there's anything else to talk about, Skinny. Yeah, the only thing I would tell you is I've settled on probably 5 potential guys for the first-round pick. Okay, who are they? Mykel Williams, the defensive end from Georgia. Again, and some of these guys might not be on the board. Walter Nolan, the defensive tackle from Ole Miss. I love him. I'm not keen on him because, again, I'm not sure I want to dip that capital in at the first round after I've spent allocated there. But he's one of those guys that just feels like, I don't want to say he's in a can't miss. He just feels like he comes with less question marks than anybody else and would just be a solid plug-and-play guy. And in theory, still upgrades you where you could use an upgrade. I mean, I know they've spent money there, but. Correct. Nick Emenwari, the safety from South Carolina. It's interesting. They brought him in for a top 30 visit. They did not bring another safety other than a kid named J.J. Roberts, to my knowledge, and this could have changed, but to my knowledge, they only brought another kid named J.J. Roberts from Marshall, who's projected to be a free agent. So it would seem like if you're going to get it, and there's a bunch of good third-round safeties. I mean, that's what I did in the mock. I told you I took a second-round guard, a 4th-round tackle. I took Mykel Williams. I took a safety in the 3rd round, and there's a bunch of third-round safeties that can actually, I think, compete for starting spots, if not, beat out a Geno Stone for a starting spot. But in the 1st round, so it's Mykel Williams, Walter Nolan. If you want to stay defensive tackle, Derek Harmon, Emenwari, and then the wild card would be Jihad Campbell, the linebacker. I think he certainly makes you far more athletic at linebacker. I think they're looking to move on from Jermaine Pratt. The question came up about the plans for Jermaine, and it was a pretty milquetoast answer from Duke Tobin. I think it's more like,
if we don't get the linebacker we want in this draft, this is not his answer. This is the way I read into it. We still got Jermaine, and I guess that's our worst case scenario is we're going to have him. But I think if they get a guy early enough, he's gone. We've talked about that a long time. And the other part too, if you read his profile, and it's been talked about too, I mean, there are analysts that believe that on third down, he can kick out and be a dominant edge rusher. So you give me a first and second down playmaking linebacker to go with Logan Wilson, and then he's your third down pass rush specialist as well. Sign me up for that guy. I mean, you're killing two birds with one stone, basically.
Yeah, of course. And then we talked about that last week. The only concern is there when you get into those types of guys, the hybrid guys, is he a tweener? Is he a guy that doesn't really do either thing well enough at the NFL level? But if he does, that's certainly an enticing addition on the defensive side.
I mean, when you hear comparisons to Micah Parsons, and I know everybody tries to do player comps, right? That's a pretty damn good comparison. I've heard that from more than one analyst. That's pretty heady. The one thing I would say about this draft, the one guy, I don't think they can miss in the first round. I really don't. I think there's just too many positional value guys that they can go after. But if they
think real quick on that, do you think the NIL with college football has made the draft better? I mean, are there more guys sticking around longer to where you have a more loaded draft class this year?
Yeah, I think that's probably a good point. And I think that's probably going to continue, right? I mean, until the house settlement comes along, we figure out what we're doing with the money being allocated.
Yeah, I mean, guys aren't leaving. And you're seeing it with basketball even more so. It used to be like, man, the second you thought you had a chance to go play professionally, even if it wasn't the NBA, if you're going to go overseas, you wanted to get in there so you could start that earning window and earn as much money as possible over the next 5, 6, 7 years, however long you were going to play professionally. That's changed with NIL and college athletics. And I heard Duke Tobin talking a little bit about it, how he said there's going to be more ranked guys on our board than ever before. There are going to be more draftable players in free agency after the draft than ever before. And I just started wondering, that's got to be a direct result of NIL, I would think.
I think you're probably right. The only thing I would be disappointed in is the following. And this is where he gave kind of a wishy-washy answer on traits versus performance. Yeah. And it would be Shamar Stewart, the defensive end from Texas A&M. Everybody loves his traits. Everybody loves his athleticism. He has a first-round grade. Some people have him rated actually, at a spot ahead of the Bengals to be taken by a team. When I see a guy with all this athleticism and traits and all those things, and he recorded all of 1.5 sacks in each of the last 3 seasons, I'm sorry, no thank you. You can have all the traits you want. Give me production over traits. And the other one, the flip side to that is, and I'm going to contradict myself probably here, and that's why I didn't mention him as one of the guys I've kind of narrowed in on, is the Mike Green pick from Marshall. And it has nothing to do with whatever character issues are off the field. He's denied everything to this point. There's been no charges filed about anything at this point. So I'm going to take that aside. He had 17 sacks this past year at Marshall. Great production. But he barely played at Virginia. And he played against, okay competition. When they played Ohio State this year, he did absolutely nothing. So there's production, but it's not production at a high level. And there's got to be that mix for me of you got the traits and you have enough production to where you're an ascending player, in my opinion.
Well, especially in this year, if we're saying this is a draft that has a lot of draftable talent, every position seems like it's loaded, then don't make this the year if you're the Bengals, especially when you feel like you're close. Don't make it the year you're reaching. Don't make it the year you're taking a guy with character issues. Don't make it the year you're taking a guy who has no production but has the measurables, or vice versa. Take the guy that looks like the sure thing this year if there are enough of those guys available at the positions you need, which by all accounts there seem to be. I would really like it if they took a guy that we don't have a bunch of red flags on. I know everyone is going to have their issue or their thing that you can nitpick, but can it not be like major red flag character issues, major injury history, or like you said, a total lack of production?
Yeah, and I guess that's the fear of Jihad Campbell is he's coming off the labrum issue, but Logan Wilson had a labrum issue and he's been playing. I mean, I know he obviously got hurt again this year, but his medical doesn't raise a red flag for me. Maybe it does for them. Maybe they test it out.
I worry less about upper body when it comes to
I'll be honest, the interesting part for me is some of the top 30s. Like I said, they brought Emanwari in. They didn't bring Malachi Starks in. And as much as he's probably a first-round talent, maybe they just don't think so. His athleticism didn't score all that highly at the combine, and maybe that's turned them off to him. I don't know. Maybe they've gotten to look at him enough to where they didn't need the visit. Maybe they've heard from people in his camp that he's a solid kid. By all accounts, he is. Maybe they didn't need that top 30 visit, but I just found it interesting that they only brought 2 safeties in, one with a first round grade, the other one with a kind of a free agent grade.
Do you get the sense that they feel they need to be more athletic on defense?
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. Yeah. And listen, I think some of that's just the natural progression. Like Jermaine Pratt's athleticism, in my opinion, has waned. It's waned.
Yeah, guys start getting older, right?
Yeah, and sometimes we've talked about this. Guys age differently. A lot of times for them, the line of demarcation is not taking a contract into their 30s. Trey Hendrickson doesn't look like he's 25 years old, right? I mean, he just plays like he's 25 years old. Jermaine Pratt last year looked like an old man playing the game. He really did. He looked a step slow at all times.
Yeah, and that bared out with what you saw in terms of production and what we saw on film as well. Question. So, all right, I think that does it for NFL draft talk. You have any last words you want to get in there?
My fans are going to hate this. I would just really hope to God they keep 6 picks for my own sanity. I mean, last year I had the 10 picks. That Saturday about drove me up a wall.
Yeah, so
I'm rooting for me.
Yeah, you're rooting for you. But okay, since you brought it up, though, what is the likelihood that you think they trade back for extra picks?
I don't, Rick. That question was asked, and Duke said he never says never. Although they don't do that.
He did mention that it comes up much less often than you'd think in terms of the opportunity.
Yeah. I did I mentioned I did 3 mock drafts in 1 week, and one of them was accepting a trade offer for my first round pick. It was from the Texans, and I moved down to 8 spots to pick 25th, and I picked up an extra 3rd and an extra 4th, I believe, on top of it. Now, again, that's playing around on a draft simulator, for goodness sakes.
Right.
But if you got some semblance of an offer like that, and again, you're looking at the board going, we still got 10 guys between this pick and there that we feel good about position value wise. Let's go. I think that could be in play. I don't think it'll happen, but I think it's probably the likelihood's more this year than it ever has been before.
I know it could happen for anyone, but is Shedeur Sanders the main name you think to watch? Like if he starts slipping, it could really have teams trading back up and being aggressive. Yeah,
I think that, or whatever run starts on maybe offensive line for teams that have offensive line heavy needs. I mean, I think the Texans are one of those. That's who offered me the trade. They wanted an offensive lineman. I can't remember who they took in my simulator, but they wanted an offensive lineman at 17. I was willing to trade back because I saw probably 8 names on the board that I still liked, and I'm like, fine, I'll go back and I'll go whatever direction the board takes me. So I don't think it happens. I just don't, but it could.
All right, let's move on to the Reds. The Reds went 2-4 since we last spoke. We were just talking about them building some momentum, getting back to 500 last week. They're now 11-13, third in the NL Central, sitting 3.5 games behind the Cubs. They're coming off back-to-back losses to the Marlins. They'll play the final game of that series here in just a few hours. They play at 1 o'clock today,
1 o'clock,
right?
Yep.
Are there any tangible differences, Skinny? I know it's early still. We're just getting through the first month of the season here, but are there any tangible differences that you can see in what a Terry Francona coached team looks like or managed team looks like compared to previous years?
I'll be honest with you, no. And I don't mean that to be a criticism. I just don't.
Maybe it's just too early. I mean, I realize it's baseball's a weird season and the fact that it takes so long, but
I think some of this is what David Bell ran into with like in the outfield last year, where do you think he wanted to put Will Benson on the lineup card?
Right.
Probably not. Do you think Terry Francona wants to put Jamer Candelario on the lineup card? Probably not. And he hasn't of late. That's where your choices are thin. Now you can argue the bullpen. It feels like the bullpen hasn't been mismanaged. I just don't feel like there's a rotation to that. Like it feels like let's try this guy in this role tonight. And listen, Graham Ashcraft had been playing great, had been pitching great, and then not so great last night in the loss. And so and I'm not here to tell you need to set like you're the 6th and 7th inning guy, but it just doesn't feel like there's a structure to it.
Do you think the lack of a back end, like a real closer, makes it kind of confusing, or at least makes it more trial by error right now? Yeah, no question. I mean, like you tried Jabot in that role, right, on opening day. Didn't work. Disaster.
And he's pitched okay otherwise, but that role didn't.
And that's not, I don't think anyone wants that to be his role either.
Correct. Then they went to Emilio Pagan, who saved games before, and he did okay for a brief period of time, and then he didn't. And again, and Alexis Diaz is still trying to find the strike zone at the moment.
Done. He's done.
I mean, it's a mess. It is a mess.
They're going to have to cut him, I think. I really believe they're going to have to end up cutting him, which is hard to believe, but what was it, just 2 years ago? He was amazing?
He was flat out dominant.
Yeah. That's hard to believe. I guess I bring that up, the thing of are there any differences in a Terry Francona managed team, because you're coming off a game yesterday to the Marlins, where they lost basically because of a couple of defensive errors. Their percentage of runs allowed that were unearned last season, 6.5%. Their percentage of runs unearned allowed so far this season, 15%. So again, I know it's very small sample size, and that number will probably work itself out as we go. But just that initial first month of the season feel so far, we've seen base running errors. We've seen lots of errors in the field, as that stat would tell you. I think a lot of people were hoping that the Terry Francona difference was going to be, well, he'll clean up that stuff. We won't see the silliness. We won't see the guys running themselves into outs. We won't see as many errors. He's old school. He's tough. He won't let the players get away with that. David Bell had no spine. He was quiet, and the players did whatever they wanted. And so the errors and the mistakes just compiled because of that. I think we're seeing pretty clearly that probably wasn't the case, and that might not have all been on David Bell.
Yeah, no, maybe you just don't have a very smart club. I mean,
or very good players,
or very good players. Correct. I mean, maybe that's a part of the problem. And maybe we're overreacting to 2 losses in Miami. We are overreacting 100%. But at this point, the question is, what can we talk about? Just a month into the season, there's not a lot in the baseball season because it is so long. You have to take everything with a grain of salt. I do think it's worth looking at. Like, everyone was so excited about Terry Francona. I said all along, he's great. I'm happy to get him, but like, give me some players, more importantly, in the offseason. And I just don't think they really did much in that way. No, I agree. I still am bullish on the rotation. It got thrown out of whack a little bit with the Lodolo situation. Yeah. I still, and especially the way Andrew Abbott's throwing the ball right now. It feels like Chase Burns is on a locomotive path to get here at some point. Rhett Lauder will be back at some point. I mean, we talked about this last week. I'm not so sure if you hang around that if you don't have 8 or 9 starting pitchers that you really believe in, that you can maybe deal one for a hitter. I think you'd be insane not to.
I mean, I'm almost to the point where I might go with like the best prospect you got and try to get a real hitter in return. Not like, don't go after a maybe possibly type of guy. Go after a big name with one of your stud pitching prospects if it gets to that point, like you said, where you feel really confident about it. I wouldn't hate that, because it feels like it is going to be hard to just find that type of hitter, that type of middle of the lineup rotational guy, via free agency or via a trade deadline deal. It feels like you're going to have to do something pretty significant here and make a big move at some point. I don't know if it's likely that the Reds will do that or not, but I would be excited to hear them thinking about that possibility for certain.
Well, I go back to, your choices right now at some of the spots is Candelario or Spencer Steer. I mean, great. What a choice I've got there. And then when CES gets back, am I hoping he becomes the guy? I think he becomes, sure, but he hasn't become that guy yet. And so again, it feels like almost similar to last year. I got this bum or this bum. Which one am I going to write on the lineup card today? Okay, I got to write one of them down here. You put him on there.
And even worse, McLean's really struggling right now.
Yeah, he is. No question.
So it's like the problem for that young core of Reds players that we've been hoping on for the last 3 seasons, that we've been dreaming on during the offseason about build around these guys, or these guys will make a big jump this year and the team will be much better. It's getting late fast for that group of young core players. All of a sudden, McLean, CES, Marte, all these guys that we were talking about that were going to be the cornerstones of this franchise, what do you got to show for all? You got Ellie and you got Hunter Green and Nick Lodolo, basically. And those are great pieces. Don't get me wrong, but you were talking about having 4 or 5 more guys there that were going to be a part of this core. Maybe they didn't all stick around, but right now, not only are they not all sticking around, you might not even have any value in a couple of them. So that's starting to become a little bit more of a concern. It's easy to say, well, he's been hurt, he's young, it's a small sample size, what have you, but you get 2+ seasons of doing the same thing with those guys, and the reality is the reality at some point.
No doubt. No question.
They had the game on Sunday where they beat the Orioles 24-2. Their highest scoring game since May 19th, 1999. In that game, Noelvi Marte did hit a grand slam and drove in 7 RBIs. Austin Wynns went 6 for 7 with 6 RBIs. I believe Marte's home run did come off a position player.
It did. Yeah, it did.
That's worth noting, by the way. But good to see him swinging the bat, getting in there, making a difference either way, because it feels like they might need him this year more than they originally thought during spring training when they made him one of the first cuts that they sent back to the minor leagues. where are we at with this Reds group, Skinny, at this point? I mean, we talked about last week. It felt like there was some momentum. Now they take another step back. They go 2-4 since we last spoke. Are we basically? Do you think we're kind of just going to be in this game all year, where the pitching's going to be good enough to get us excited for a short stretch, but ultimately just not enough offense to be consistent and go on a run?
Yeah, I mean, I heard an interview. I can't remember who it was this past week. It looks like Jake Fairley's turning the corner. And I'm like, is he? Did he just have a good week? Is he turning the corner? Or did he just have a good week? I've had some people tell me Spencer Steer, man, he's having good at bats. He's coming. Okay, the proof isn't in the pudding at the moment. I'll believe that when I see it. So
I believe there's still the potential for him to rebound if he gets healthy. It just doesn't even seem like he's close.
I do too. What is rebound to what? To what he was last year, a 220 hitter? I mean, that's my point. To rebound to what?
Maybe something in between there and the year before, right?
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought.
An average role guy.
Yeah, that's what I thought he was going to be. I mean, a guy who's going to hit you 260 with 22 to 25 homers and hitting the 7th spot in the lineup, and that's a pretty good spot to be.
I would definitely take that. I think all Reds fans would take that from him at this point. They'd take that from anyone. And that would fill that last outfield spot, I think. That's all I got on the Reds. You got anything else?
I got nothing else.
All right, let's move on to college basketball, where the transfer portal officially closed on Tuesday. Now, let's be clear about what that means. No one else can enter the portal at this point. Now, you may still hear another name or two that pops in because they had put their name in. There can be a 48-hour grace period where the paperwork's filled out and everything. So maybe someone's put their name in on Tuesday. We won't hear about it until today or Thursday, what have you. But at this point, we all know who is in the portal. Now, they don't have to be committed to a new team yet. Well, that'll continue to play out over the next month plus. But for the local teams, we're definitely starting to see some real movement and see them get closer to finalizing their roster. Last week, we talked about Xavier's big week. They brought in 3 guys. They added a 4th right after we recorded that show, I think, so we can talk about him this week. Then Cincinnati, though, this week had the big additions. Wes Miller and his staff made 2 big additions in the transfer portal when they brought in 7'2" UCF center Mustafa Sham and Baylor wing Jalen Celestine, 2 guys who are going to probably start right away, you would think, for this UC team. Definitely going to be big impact players. Sham was a top 50 prospect in high school. People believe he's now an NBA talent that's going to get drafted. I do like the fact that the bigs now, they could not be more opposite, Skinny. We've got a 7'2", lanky mover, shot blocker who can step out and shoot a 3 in Sham. And then we got the Jalen Haynes kid who we talked about last week, who's like 260 or whatever he is, a big-bodied, physical low-post guy. What are your thoughts on the front court that Wes Miller's putting together here?
Yeah, I mean, I think he averaged, 10 and 6 and had 88 block shots last year. To your point, he does shoot the 3. He doesn't shoot it well, mind you, but maybe that's a part of his game that'll evolve a little bit. I do think this. You have a chance now to throw the ball in the post and have a guy make a post move and score in the post, or at least attract a double team in the post to hopefully get some other things in your offense going. I do think he gives them that. To your point, he is an NBA prospect, although the comp I saw from one of the draft sites was Mo Bamba. That's not exactly a ringing endorsement, but Mo Bamba did stick in the league for a little bit and was serviceable.
Yeah, and it just upgrades your talent, if nothing else.
No
UC
question.
needs a talent that's thought like a Mo Bamba talent would be more than enough. Or I shouldn't say more than enough. It's definitely something you would take on this UC roster without a doubt. Now, Thom is, you mentioned throwing it into the post. I mean, I feel like they're still going to have that problem a little bit in the sense that he's more of like a lob threat, a pick and roll type of guy, a guy that wants to maybe step out and shoot the 3 occasionally. I don't know how good he's going to be one-on-one that you can throw like, hey, our offense is struggling. Let's just throw the ball to the big man and get something going. I don't know if he can give them that, which you might like to see a little bit more of that out of this team, because the guards I'm still wondering about. I mean, I guess the theory is you hope Jizzle James kind of develops into that scorer that he didn't quite become this past year that you were hoping for?
Well, I mean, I guess, you got Kreese can play point. Celestine can handle the ball. Day-Day's still on the roster, can handle the ball. I mean, you've got a lot of options at guard all of a sudden. I'll give him that.
You do, but I'm more concerned about the alpha scorer for this group, right?
No, I think that's still a fair point. I think that's still a fair, because, I mean,
if you're talking about the starting lineup right now, Skinny, it's probably Jizzle James at the point, Sincere Harris at the 2.
I don't know, man. I thought Day-Day gave him something last year at the point.
Well, maybe it's Day-Day and Jizzle then starting together at the 1 and 2.
Or Kreese. And
So what do you think the starters would be then out of that? What would you go with?
I don't know. I think it'll be interesting to sort out. I think that's the fun part. If I was today, I would probably go, to your point, Day-Day, Jizzle, the 7-2 kid, Bayev, obviously, or you at least think.
Yeah, that's what I was going to wonder. I'm more asking you about the point guards there, or the guard spots, but like Celestine and Abayev, I feel like probably are going to start together. So Celestine's the 3 and Abayev's maybe an undersized 4 there.
That's an undersized 4.
Yeah, or does Abayev start at the 3 and they're still looking for a starting forward?
And that may be it too. Or do you say we can go undersized at those positions because we have a 7-2 shot blocker?
Yeah. I mean, you would imagine, based on what we've seen from Wes Miller in the past, you're probably going to try to be up-tempo, free-flowing, athletic group. So I could see them playing a little bit more undersized and going with Sham at the center spot with that mentality, kind of being pressurized defense and all of that. But I still think with Abayev being a true freshman, putting him in as an undersized forward might not be the best way to get him initiated into the Big 12. But Celestine, the addition that they made, it's kind of funny because he comes from Baylor. He's a 6'7" wing, essentially. So UC and Baylor basically traded Dan Skillings and Jalen Celestine, right? Like that's what just happened?
No, I think that's exactly what happened.
And the question is, who should feel better about that? I mean, I guess with Skillings, you have more upside in theory, more potential. With Celestine, you have more... He's just more solid and more of a baseline, but you probably don't have the upside with him.
Yeah, I think that's probably it. And I mean, Dan needed new territory. I mean,
without a doubt, need a scenery change.
Yeah, and sometimes that's really what you need. And so, yeah, it is. It's an interesting swap in that regard. Back to the forward. Where's Tyler McKinley fit into that mix?
I don't see, especially coming off an injury, I don't see him as a starter.
I don't either. I'm with you. I don't either.
But he has a heck of an opportunity now, especially assuming they don't bring in a bona fide. Because you're thinking if they spent on Sham to bring him in, the 7'2" center from UCF, and you've already got a Sean Abayev in the building, and I imagine a wing transfer from Baylor and Celestine wasn't cheap. You had to pay something to get him. Right. So I don't know that there's a ton of money left over for like a bona fide starting power forward. If you're Tyler McKinley, you got to be licking your chops thinking I've got a year in the system. Granted, I'm coming off an injury, but if I'm ready to go, I've got a real chance to, whether it's start or play a significant role on this team.
Right. Yeah. And maybe it's a situation where you do start small. You do start Celestine and Abayev, and depending on the matchups, then you need a little bit more bulk in there with McKinley. But to your point, I do think that's probably the next piece is to find a 4.
My thought on the starting lineup today, if they played a game tomorrow, would be Jizzle at the 1, Sincere Harris at the 2, Celestine at the 3, Abayev at the 4, and Sham at the 5. And that gives you, I think, a really defensive-minded group. I mean, you think at the 2, 3, and the 5, you are really good defensively. And then you've got Jizzle and Abayev, a true freshman, trying to anchor you on the offensive end and get you enough scoring.
Yeah, so then, again, this is I guess a good problem to have. What do you do with minutes for 2 backup point guards then, in Dede and Krisa?
That's a great question. I mean, Krisa is definitely a shooter. I think that's his role on this team is going to be a shooter. Do you view him almost more as like a shooting guard to step in?
Maybe. The only thing I'll go with Jizzle, though, is when Jizzle had the ball in his hands last year, did he try to do too much? And he just got out of whatever – he just never got comfortable in that lead guard role. And maybe some of it was he didn't have a pick-and-roll partner either. Maybe he'll thrive with a pick-and-roll partner.
Yeah, I mean, but it could be possible. Maybe they view him as the starting shooting guard and say, hey, it didn't quite work out as well last year, but we still think you're our guy in terms of being our go-to scorer, so let's move you off the ball, set you up a little bit more often, and you've got a shooter next to you in Kirk Krisa, you've got a pick-and-roll threat in Sham, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, no, I'll give them credit. I mean, they've pieced together a nice enough roster.
It's interesting. I mean, it's something to start dreaming on if you're a UC fan, certainly after this week, not that they added the big man. Xavier did add Isaiah Walker from Belmont, who's a local product.
I saw him play a bunch in high school at Wyoming. I did a handful of their games for the school. He's a nice player. Yeah,
he's at Wyoming, 6'5", wing, not really a shooter. He's more of a get-to-the-rim type of guy. He guarded the other team's best player a lot of times when he was at Belmont, but I wouldn't say he's necessarily a great defender. He's not the quickest laterally, but he competes hard. He's conscientious. He understands, he wants to play defense. He understands the system. He's a very smart kid, so I think in terms of trying to pick things up quickly and get into a new team and ingratiate himself there, it'll work out well. But yeah, I would imagine he's sort of a back end of the rotation type guy. If he's like your 8th, 9th, 10th guy, you feel okay about it.
Yeah, and I think that's probably what the role would be, and that's a good pickup for a role like that.
Yeah, a guy who's done some scoring, has experience, played at a pretty good level for a really good coach there at Belmont, in my opinion. And you feel like what he's capable of doing, he'll be ready to do. I just don't know that there's a ton of upside there for him. I don't think he's like a 8 to 10 points per game type of guy in the Big East, probably.
Yeah, he averaged what, 10 at Belmont?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kentucky, Skinny, they added Florida transfer guard Denzel Aberdeen. He's a 6'5" athletic combo guard, known for defensive versatility. And then the last day of the transfer portal we mentioned was on Tuesday. Travis Perry jumped into the portal, kind of a surprise late addition there. You have to wonder if maybe the late addition of Aberdeen kind of put the writing on the wall for Perry, and he thought, maybe my role is going to be not what I was expecting it to be, so I need to keep my options open here.
Yeah, I mean, in defense of him, he's the 11th or 12th guy on the roster at the moment. I can't blame him. He's a Kentucky kid. It was cool he got a chance to go to Kentucky, got a chance to play at that level, got a chance to play at that level on a pretty darn good team. But again, I mean, if you're a smart enough kid, you're going to look at the numbers, and if you're honest with yourself, you're just going to simply go, do I want to play here because of the love of Kentucky, or do I want to play? And again, go play. And
not to mention that, but for a guy like that, if you're looking at the numbers getting shelled out in the portal right now.
Oh, I know it.
He could get some real money. I mean, yeah, he's the 11th or 12th guy at Kentucky maybe right now, but he showed enough last year that teams are going to overpay for him. There's no doubt about it. Especially getting late here as teams start to get more desperate. I think there will be a real market for him. And I know some of the local fans have already started asking, like Xavier fans, hey, do we got a chance with them? I certainly don't expect him to end up locally at one of these schools, but he will have some suitors for sure.
Yeah, he's got some point guard potential. I mean, he started some games at point guard or got significant minutes at point guard when Lamont Butler was hurt and Kreese obviously was hurt, and they were kind of down to who's going to play point tonight. Well, they put the ball in his hands and he did okay. I mean, I didn't expect him to do great things. He did okay, and again, I can't blame him. I wouldn't blame Trent Noah if he did the same thing. I think Trent Noah's upside's bigger. I really do.
Yeah.
I think Trent Noah can actually be a rotational piece at some point.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I actually thought Travis Perry might be able to, depending on how things worked out. But I think they put together a better roster than maybe they were thinking.
When you start crunching numbers, though, at some point you got to be honest with yourself, right? If I'm the 11th or 12th guy, and I know that, even though I think I can bust my ass to get above that, you're probably not. I mean, some of these guys are bona fide dudes that are coming in, and you're just not going to go above them on the pecking order. So again, look in the mirror, make the choice, and it's probably the right choice.
Now, with the addition of again Denzel Aberdeen, the Florida transfer who played, it was basically their sixth man at Florida this year.
Guy, yeah, right.
Yeah. So he
first score off the bench. Yeah, they
played an important role for a team that obviously had incredible success. Do you feel like this pretty much solidifies the new roster, or do you think I can't imagine there's another impact guy that they're adding, right? It'd be more of a rotational guy at the end.
I do think you hold your breath. Does Owe stay in the draft?
Yeah.
I mean,
that's the big concern right now.
I don't think he does. I think it's worth him doing this and getting the evaluation he needs. I don't think he's an NBA level player yet. I haven't seen where he would be projected, if he would be even drafted at all. And again, with NIL today, if you're not going to be picked, why battle it? Go back and get the money you're getting from an NIL perspective. I get putting your name in. I do understand that part of it.
Yeah, he's got to get the feedback right now because he is a legitimate NBA guy potentially down the line. I don't know what his draft stock will be, but he will get an opportunity in the NBA at some point. So I get him needing that feedback, but he's a guy, he's one of the perfect players for the current NIL system or revenue share system, where he is going to be a fantastic college piece that you would pay top dollar for multiple years. And so for him, he's going to leave money on the table if he gets into the draft too early, quite honestly.
Yeah. But again, I think to the point, I wouldn't panic yet. I think it's a good more of a I need feedback than it is I'm hopping. Now maybe he chooses otherwise.
Yeah, and I just don't see anyone telling him he's a lottery pick. And I think outside of that, he'd be dumb to go.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Let me ask you a question, because I read a story this morning along these lines on CBS Sports about guys who've exhausted their eligibility, putting their name in the portal with the hopes of potentially getting some more eligibility, depending on how the house.
Dante Maddox Jr. did it last week for Xavier.
So when might that be known, and what will be the mechanism behind that taking place? And my goodness gracious, if that was the case, the portal would be a 5-ring circus again, if it's not a 5-ring circus already.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically the end of the sport as we know it, if that comes to fruition, because it's, I mean, not the end of the sport, but it's the end of the theory of college athletics. There's no more 4 years of college or any, you just have professional players playing as long as they want for you at that point, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, if you tell them there's no timetable on this, you don't have to leave at any point. You can just continue playing as long as you want. Then we just have a new professional sports league at that point.
What we're going to have is a lot of basketball players with grad degrees running around, which I think is a good thing.
I have no issue with that. We've already had that. This is something entirely different. This is guys with no rhyme or reason just saying, hey, like Dante Maddox Jr. has played 5 years already.
Correct. You still have to go to class. I mean, that's still part of it. I don't know how, what classes you have to take, but there's still some. So that's my point is, at least you're going to take.
Like, we've already gotten so far down the line to where most of these guys who had like the extra COVID years, who had already graduated, that were just doing some BS like graduate classes, were barely scratching the booger and online check-ins to begin with. Like, do they really have to go to class? Are they even going to class anymore? I don't know that any of that's legit. Just kidding. The last time I heard, like, who is the last guy who had eligibility concerns for academics? It doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, that's a great point.
There's no such thing.
Yeah, that is a legit point. There's no question about that. So my other question to you is, again, you follow this far closer than I do, and I follow the NFL far closer than you do. What is the holdup on the House settlement thing right now? I thought that was supposed to be done like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, so they had that hearing, and a lot of people were thinking that the judge at the hearing might say, okay, we're good, let's move forward with it. She actually said, this looks good for the most part. There are some things I'd like to see cleaned up or cleared up before we go forward with it. So basically she said, here's where we're at in it, and you guys need to fix these things. So the NCAA is kind of responding with that, fixing up the last things. It does sound like the settlement is going to go through. Now, that doesn't change anything for most of those guys that you're talking about. The guys that are looking for the extra eligibility, it doesn't change that for them. There are some other lawsuits in certain states that I guess this is being fought, where guys are trying to fight for extra years of eligibility. I think essentially what happened is guys like Dante Maddox Jr., let's just use him as an example because it's one we're all familiar with. He played 5 years because he played a COVID year that didn't count against his eligibility, just finished up his 5th year at Xavier as a graduate transfer. He is out of eligibility clearly. I mean, there's no argument against it, really. His agent now has said, like, well, it doesn't hurt you anything to hop in the portal. Let's put your name in the portal. If something with the rules change around college athletics within the next few months, then at least you'll be in the portal, you'll be available, and you can still potentially take advantage of that. But while you do that, we're going to go through the normal process of trying to get you an overseas professional deal and all that. So most of these guys, it is totally just an absolute prayer. Their agent said, you might as well do it. There's nothing to lose. In case something changes, let's just go ahead and do it. And that's why you saw all those names jump in. I don't think most of them have any reasonable eligibility left or anything to think that they would have a case to be made. They're just doing it just in case something happens. Now, there are a couple of guys out there who have, some type of weird situation where they got hurt or a coach did something weird to them and they're trying to argue for that. I don't know what the NCAA would do in those cases, but I think most of these guys will just they'll just disappear. I mean, we saw a couple of them last year, like a kid from Youngstown State tried to do this, DJ Burns, and Xavier was actually recruiting him a little bit in case he did find another year of eligibility. It never came to fruition. He just disappeared. I mean, went on to professional life.
Speaking of the injury thing, what's up with Sam Vinson?
It's a great question. We didn't mention NKU. They have had a few more transfer portal additions. We'll kind of wrap it up for all the schools maybe next week or the week after that when they're all kind of finalized and give you more of a rundown, because basically all of NKU's additions have been Division II guys, JUCO guys. I mean, guys you've never heard of before, which is understandable. Sam Vinson is the big piece left for them, and it's really going to change their entire roster. I think if you have Sam Vinson coming back, you think, okay, like they've got a nice core coming back. They've added some pieces that are intriguing. This is an interesting team. If you don't have Sam Vinson coming back, it's like, well, is there enough here? It's hard to imagine there is. It's going to be a complete crapshoot this year going into the Horizon League where everyone's facing the same situation. In terms of where his deal stands, the latest I heard was that, we had talked about they're in the appeal process with the NCAA. The NCAA had come back to NKU and asked for some more information about the specifics of Sam's case. Typically, that's a good thing when that happens, but we don't know where it's going from there. I mean, it doesn't mean anything one way or the other, but it is good that at least they haven't given them a no, he's not going to be eligible. And that's the last I've heard. So obviously kind of waiting anxiously for more news on that front.
All right. That's all I got.
All right. We did not have, we're doing this a day early, and admittedly, I did not submit the bat signal out there on social medias for Ask Any Anything questions until it was probably too late. I did not get any new questions. So do you have anything here that you want to talk about or discuss, any happenings over the last week?
We talk food so much. So I will ask you this. My daughter had us over for Easter brunch. She did all the heavy lifting and she did a great job. And then we had kind of a late-ish dinner, like around 8 o'clock because we had the brunch. And we had a prime rib roast for dinner. It was delicious. She did a great job. So I would ask you that or the traditional ham. She does not like ham. That's why we didn't have ham.
Ham is for peasants. I've given the take on this podcast before. Ham is for peasants. And we went to not one, but 2 places that had ham on this Easter. Like the in-laws did it, fine, no problem. I expected that. But I go back to my family and my own mother put ham in front of me like I was just nothing to her. I couldn't believe it. So yeah, prime rib all the way. Kudos to your daughter. Prime rib is actually like one of my favorite meals, period. I love it.
There's no question.
Yeah,
no
so
question.
That is a great Easter move by her. Shout out to her. I think everybody should try to move to prime or even honestly like roast beef, anything other than ham. Ham is terrible.
I like ham. I like the tradition of ham, but she doesn't. It's her house. She decided to cook prime rib. Have at it. I'm not going to not eat it.
Well, God bless her. Shout out to everyone's favorite zombie. I'm glad they all had a good Easter.
Exactly. So there's that. I just thought I wanted to bring that up because I knew
someone did ask last week on commented on our thing, said, why do you guys talk about food so much? Like, that's what we get asked. That's what we get. We don't make the questions.
No, correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'll answer whatever you want me to answer.
That's right.
There we go. All right. Thanks, Rick. We will be back next week. We'll have some new Bengals players to talk about, not only the draft picks, but we'll know some of the undrafted college free agent signees by then. We'll have another week of Reds baseball behind us and probably some more news from the transfer portal. It feels like it's never ending and much more. For Rick Broering, I'm Richard Skinner. It's been the Skinny Podcast, the weekly Poetry edition, presented by Blake, the Attorney Maisley.